Hi, everyone. Welcome to Spice's first ever release community call. Woo! This will be the first of many, as we'll be hosting these calls after every major release going forward. So you can expect to see us and hear from us on effectively a monthly basis. The goal and intention of these calls is pretty simple. It's a way to get the community together, to learn from each other, and also an opportunity for Spice users and customers to interact directly with Spice engineers, share any feedback on the product, and then ask any questions relative to the most recent release and I guess anything under the Spice sun. So really, kind of casual agenda for today. We'll start off just with some brief intros of the folks demoing. Some of the contributions to v1.6. There's been a smaller sub-release as well, just over the past week. We'll then get into more of a deep dive overview of the functionality included in 1.6. And then transition to some demos of some of the bigger pieces of functionality included in this release. And we will conclude with an opportunity for you to ask any questions of the Spice team, as well as point you to some helpful resources to get it more involved as your usage of Spice increases. So to kick off, I would love to introduce the folks I'll be demoing today. Maybe we could conclude with Luke and Philip. Maybe Abe, would you mind introducing yourself and maybe how you contributed to 1.6?
Yeah, I'm Abe. I'm a software engineer intern at Spice AI. And for 1.6, I worked on support for OpenAI's Responses API, which I'll be demoing.
Great. Thanks, Abe. Sergey, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, welcome to our first community call. I'm Sergey, very excited to demonstrate Kafka support on this call, and I primarily working on a query engine. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Sergey. Philip, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Philip. I'm one of the co-founders of Spice, and I'm grateful that we've started off this community call series. Luke?
I'm Luke Kim, founder and CEO of Spice AI. And yeah, excited to share with everyone what we've been working on and shipped in 1.6.
Great. Thanks, Luke. And I guess, Luke, it's time. Would you mind walking us through an overview of 1.6?
Yeah. So let me share my screen here. Yeah, so for Spice open source, we ship major releases every 3 weeks and minor releases almost weekly. And so you'll see that we've shipped over the last couple of months 1.4, 1.5, and 1.6 just recently at the end of August here. And in 1.6, we have a major upgrade with DataFusion. So DataFusion is the database query engine that we use within Spice. And it's got a big ecosystem itself, and they do pretty major updates around about every month. And so we aim to incorporate these within Spice. We have also done significant work in DataFusion itself to make it work for things like query federation and acceleration. And so we incorporate all of that within Spice. And so 1.6 includes the DataFusion upgrade to 48, which includes a bunch of different things, but exciting is it reduces memory footprint, has faster queries, and especially around some of these string functions. And then also supports a new order by all to make queries easier for not having to specify every field in your order by. And you can read more about DataFusion 48 in their blog here. Also within 1.6, we have a bunch of other features, including additional support for Amazon S3 vectors in multi-column primary keys. You can read more about our support for Amazon S3 vectors in this blog post here that we shipped a couple of weeks ago. And support for that for general S3 vectors has been around since 1.5. We also now support model-to-vec embedding models, and these models are a way to essentially distill transformer-based models and make them much, much faster and much more efficient. And so now you can easily pull one of these models from Hugging Face just by specifying this in the Spice pod and use that for vectorizing your data and making it available to vector search. We're also excited to ship Kafka data connector. We already had support for Kafka using Debezium for change data capture. But within this release, you can now take any arbitrary JSON from Kafka and use that to ingest data into the Spice runtime and make it available to across structured data sources, unstructured data sources, and document data sources. So the ability to pull MongoDB data in and query that across Spice with acceleration. And OpenAI has come out with a new Responses API, which enables you to do LLM completions as an improvement to the standard chat completions API, which enables you to pull in different tools, especially hosted tools within OpenAI. So for example, their web search tool, their code interpreter tool, you can use through this new API, which is now available on Spice as v1 responses. And we have additional improvements to OpenAI around usage tiers. And then in 1.6.1, we have shipped even more improvements to the Kafka data connector, including better type inference and better JSON support, and fixed a bunch of other bugs as well. So that's kind of the overview of 1.6 and 1.6.1. Would love you to check it out. It's very easy to get started. You can simply, if you're already running Spice, do Spice upgrade. And if you're just getting started, you can come over to the docs here and click on the Get Starting and install Spice using the usual methods like curl or homebrew and get it running within just a couple of minutes on your laptop. So that's the overview of 1.6. And I think that we're going straight into demos here. And so we can start demoing a couple of features in 1.6, of which I will start. So what I want to show today is really how easy it is to get started with Amazon S3 vectors with Spice. And you've probably heard about vector search and different types of search and query. And maybe it has seemed like a lot. And with Spice, you can really just get this running in a couple of minutes. So I'm going to demo this in Spice Cloud, but everything I show today, you can run self-hosted, you can run on your laptop, fully open source. You don't need to use our cloud, but this makes it very easy to just show it up and running. So the way that you configure Spice is using this spicepod.yaml file. And you can kind of think of this as like a package.json file from a Node application, if you're familiar with that. And it's just a way to configure different data sets and models within Spice. So the first dataset I'm going to show here is a dataset that's using some CVEs, which are security updates or bulletins from the Nginx project. And this data is stored within Databricks. And to be able to access this data, all we have to do is say from Databricks, the table that I want to get, and then just pass in a couple of access tokens. And then from there, we can deploy this out into the cloud. And then we can start querying on this data. So here, it's the same project here. I'm just using a different tab. And I can now run queries against that data. And you can see that I've got very fast query across that data within the platform here. And you can kind of see that I've got this Nginx data set here with different columns in it. So how might we use this data set with Amazon S3 vectors to do vector search? So I'm going to build this up incrementally so you can see how to actually do that. So the first thing that we want to do is, this is just a small data set, so I wanted to demo it here. But you might have a lot of data, thousands, millions, billions of rows. And Spice can handle that, and it can make it consistently fast. So the first thing I'm going to show is how do we actually just accelerate this data and make it fast? And we can do this by very, very simply adding this acceleration piece of config here. And what we're saying is, like, we want to accelerate this data and we want to use DuckDB. And so now I can just click Save and Deploy. that's going to update the running Spice instance within Spice Cloud. And once that's deployed, it's deployed here. And then if I come across to here, you can see that it's deployed out this new instance and it's running. If I want, I can go see the logs for this new instance. And then when I come back to my query now, here, I can do query, and you can see that this query is even much faster. So it went down about 6 times faster from about 1 second to about 100 milliseconds. And you can imagine if you're doing much larger data sets, you get this incredibly fast query within this accelerated database, which is DuckDB. And Spice manages all the work to keep that data updated for you to make it really fast. So the next thing I'll show is just how easy it is to start adding vector search to this. So I will add in another piece of config for Amazon S3 vectors. And all I have to do is put this new section here. And we're saying we want to use vectors and enable it to be true. And we're going to use engine S3 vectors. And we'll give some parameters to it to connect over. So the index name and the region and a couple of secrets to be able to go and connect to this. And Spice will do, Spice Cloud will manage all the secrets for you automatically, so and securely. So if I come across here, then you can see I have configured all my secrets here in advance so that we can connect over to these data sources. So yeah, all I have to do now is that's how I configure vectors, and then how do I want to actually enable vector search on a particular field within my data set. I just have to add a couple of more pieces of configuration. So the first thing is Amazon S3 Vectors is a large vector query store that's built on S3 for very large scale vector search. And what you have to do to be able to use it is you actually have to vectorize your data first to be able to put it in there. And normally that's a whole process, but within Spice, what you can do is simply just add in what we call an embeddings model, where we can connect over to different hosted embeddings models or load your own. So this could be OpenAI, it could be Bedrock, it could be any other model from Hugging Face. And again, we'll connect over to this, and simply just adding a couple of lines of YAML here, we can add an embedding model into the application. And the next thing that I have to do is simply just connect that embedding model over to the data set. And we can do that by adding in this piece of configuration here, which just says, hey, in the column of CVE data that's in my data set, I want to use the Bedrock embeddings Titan model to vectorize the data. And then I want to use this ID as the row lookup. So now I can click Save and Deploy, as I did before. And if we come across to the instance here, it will load up. And over here in deployments, it's actually deployed here now. And so we'll come across here and it's loaded up. And so I can actually see in the logs here that it has automatically vectorized this data and updated the S3 vectors index for query. Without me actually doing any additional thing, there's no additional code to run, it's just this configuration. And so now if I come across to my query, then I can start running vector search queries on this data. And that's really as simple as using this vector search function that's available within Spice called vector search here. And I'm saying I want to run vector search on this data set that I've just configured called engine XCVE, and I want to search for the term SSL. And so I can run that. And you can see that I've got very fast sub-second vector search query across this entire data set, and very fast query without having to do any additional work. And so now I've got vector search running super fast and easily. I might want to do some additional things. If I have much larger data set, I want to start doing some filtering on that. So I'm going to come across here now and add one more thing to the Spice pod, where I can now start adding additional filtering to this configuration. And so now I've added a couple more columns, and I'm saying I want to be able to make these columns filterable. And then in addition, I might want to actually use this data within my LLM model. And so I'm going to add in one more piece, which is a model from OpenAI. And so I'm going to say, very simply, add this additional configuration from OpenAI. I want to use GPT-4. And I want to, this tools auto will mean that this model can now use that vector search. So I'm going to go click save and deploy here again. And that's going to take maybe just another couple of seconds to go and deploy and run again. So we'll just wait for a few seconds and we'll come back over to our interface here and run a couple more queries before we finish up. So the first query here, once that's deployed, we'll just make sure that it's running here. Okay, so it's up and running. So now I can come back and I can now do things like where the assigner or the owner of this is Red Hat, and I can do additional queries on it to filter it. So now I can do even larger scale vector search across bigger data sets because I can filter down that data and run vector search over it. And you can see this is still incredibly fast, sub-second. And then I might, do different parameters in here to make this even faster. And just to show you what's going on behind the scenes, what we can do is what's called an explain plan, which allows you to see what's actually going on. So if I do that same query and I say, do this explain format in front of it and run the query again, then here we can actually see what's going on. And this looks maybe a little complicated at first, but what I want to show you is it's running this query and it's doing all this compute. And then here down at the bottom, it's pushing this query into the S3 vectors service itself. So you didn't have to do any additional code to make all this work. You just had to do the configuration, and now you get this large-scale vector query using S3 vectors, and we do all the work to push that query into the S3 vector service itself. In addition, we wanted to do this filtering. And remember that we had accelerated this in DuckDB, and you can see here it actually pushed down some of that filters into DuckDB. And up here, it's actually taking the S3 vectors results and the DuckDB results, combining them together to produce that final very, very fast query and search query across the data set. And so finally, the last thing I'll show is we had connected this over to a model. And so now, again, without any additional work, I can now start using that vector search query within my LLM model. And so just to start with, I can say, hey, what data set do you have access to? And it immediately knows I have access to this CVE data set. And so I might be able to say, describe the data set. And it knows things about the data set. And then I could say, search over the data set for SSL. And again, it will automatically know that it has access to vector search. It can do a search across that data set, get the results back, even give me the scores for it in terms of the ranking scores of how they rank. And you can see all this was incredibly fast and without additional work. And finally, all of this within the Spice runtime is traced. So we can see what's going on in this observability section here. And so we can see that we did an AI chat here and we said search over the data set for SSL. And we've captured all of the trace so that you know what's going on in the background. So you can see we started with an AI chat that went and did this list data set. So it knew what data set it has access to. And then it did this vector search on the term SSL to be able to get those results back, bundle it all the way back into their chat completion, and give you the AI answer back to return your search query. And you can kind of see the whole trace line of what it did here at the end. So hopefully you can see in just a couple of minutes how easy it is to go from basically nothing to connecting over to a data set using this very simple YAML configuration from Databricks. And again, this could be any other data set, MySQL, Postgres, Snowflake, Parquet files in S3, CSV files in S3, and add acceleration to make it super fast, add vector search to make it to provide similarity search over that data set, make it filterable, and then connect it over to a model to produce that AI answer. And that's it. Thank you.
Very cool stuff, Luke. Thank you. Advait, do you want to demo some of your OpenAI Responses API work?
Yeah, of course. Let me share my screen. Give me 1 second. I have to rejoin in order to do that.
Sounds good. While we wait for Advait, Sergey, are you prepared to maybe demo some Kafka work?
Sure.
Great.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, super excited to demonstrate Kafka support, as Kafka is very powerful and widely used technologies. And with the new Spice data connector, we can now enable very interesting new scenarios I'm going to demonstrate next. In my local setup, I have Kafka running locally, and I have a single topic that simulates real-time orders. Imagine there is a warehouse where we have orders information populated in real time. And here's example Kafka message representing this information. With Spice 1.6 release, I can now connect to any arbitrary Kafka topic using the following configuration. In my demo Spice pod, I need to point to target Kafka topic. In my case, it's orders events. Provide main configuration parameters, how find Kafka brokers and how to authenticate. In my case, it's just plain identification, localhost, and specify local materialization so we can aggregate information from the Kafka topic. And that's it. So this is the only configuration required. I'll do Spice run. Spice has started, and we can see that we started populating new information from Kafka. So it's now available in Spice, and we can query this information. Okay. I'll start Spice REPL. Okay, let's check if table is available. Yes, table is available, and just let's check the schema. And we can see that we have a schema automatically inferred by Spice. In real time, when we receive messages from Kafka, we can automatically detect the target schema and all fields and the types. So this is how it works. You don't need to specify any information, just need to point to target Kafka topic. And now we can do some demo queries. I'll start from query representing real-time KPI. For example, I would like to calculate some statistic based on last hour information. So in my case, I can use the query where I filter all information to take only last hour and do aggregation. Let's give it a try. Yep, we just run the query and it worked, and it uses the real-time Kafka stream. So if I rerun the query, I should see different information. Right. So we have more customers, distinct suppliers, and we have an increased number of orders. So basically, this is the first step how you can use Kafka to connect to Kafka topic and start querying your messages. But we can do a few other things. For example, we can, let's say we would like to enrich this information with other data sets. For example, let's say we have lookup tables stored on S3 as Sparky files. We can enable those datasets as simple just as adding configuration for them to SpicePod. In my case, I will add customer, nation, and supplier dataset, and they will be accelerated locally in Spice. I hit save, and you can see that those datasets automatically loaded. We detected changes in SpicePod configuration, and we loaded those datasets. So if now I can do show tables, we can see new dataset added, and those datasets from S3 Parquet files. So what I'm going to do, I will join information from Kafka orders with nation and supplier information, lookup tables. And run the query. And we can see that now with the single query, we got information from several different sources. We've got main information from Kafka and names, nation names from S3 using joins. But what else we can do? We can add some model. Let's say I would like to work with those datasets using LLM. So what I will do, similar to Luke's demonstration, I just enable simple configuration in my SpicePod, telling, okay, I would like to use OpenAI GPT 4.1 model, and this is my identification key. So I hit save, and we can see that model was automatically loaded and ready for usage. So I'll open another terminal. Run Spice Chat. Spice Chat is our simple version of tool that you can use to invoke the models. And I can say, for example, what datasets are available. And the model confirmed that it has access to all datasets. We can ask, for example, how many queries in our Kafka topic, how many orders do we have? And the model was able to detect, basically created query to the right dataset and show information. It's pretty fast. It's just in 3 seconds. But we can also do something more interesting, like let's ask to create some chart, for example, for us. Show total spent by customer, nation as ASCII chart. And let's see if model will be able to complete this query. Yeah, we can see that model was able to receive this information, and Brazil seems to be the customers from Brazil did the most, spend the most amount of money on the orders. And interesting, it will be interesting to double check the model calculation, how specifically it was able to get this information and display. For this, we will use observability tool similar to Luke's demonstration. I can go observability mentor, and I can find my chat request. This is our query show total spent by customer, nation as ASCII chart. And this information and all logs are propagated from my local SpicePod instance through special configuration. It's called management. And this configuration, all logs and traces automatically become available in our cloud version. So in this specific request, what we see that model use tool to list all datasets. Then the model asks for a specific schema for each dataset. to understand what fields available, what they type. And the model come up with this SQL query based on this information, and we can double check if it's correct. And the calculation was sum, like quantity multiplied and unit price, it's total spend, which is correct for me. And the model was able to join this information based or this key with lookup tables to provide user-friendly names like Brazil for us. And another thing that we can do is because ASCII chart probably not the best way to represent BI and visual information. We support Power BI as a tool, and we can connect through Power BI to the SpicePod that I'm running locally. I have a Power BI desktop running on a virtual machine, and let's see if I can connect it to my Spice instance. Data. For this, we support special Spice Power BI connector. I have it already installed. I need to specify my hostname. G and port. And yeah, we see our Spice runtime and schema, and we see our orders table. We can now connect it to Power BI and create first simple chart. For example, I would like to get number of orders in real time. So it's connection created. It's loading. Okay. It will be our chart, and we will aggregate information by order count. And the last thing I need to do is to enable refresh. For example, we'll be refreshing every second. Okay, hit save. And we can see live data through Power BI from real-time Kafka stream. Just to recap what we was able to achieve so far in just a few minutes. We was able to connect through Kafka using this simple configuration. We added few other data sets from different source, from S3 Parquet files, and we were able to complete federated queries by joining data from different data sets, tables and data sources. We used model asking to get some information and insights from Kafka using LLM and using this 5 lines of code. And we also connected Power BI to real-time Kafka stream. This
Really
is
neat, Sergey. The ease of use here is super impressive. Nice work. Advay, are you all dialed in now?
Yep. I think it should work now. I should be able to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess just a little context about the demo that I'll be giving. Suppose you're a developer, you're working in your terminal, you write a command that errors. And what you would normally do is probably go search for that error, go paste into ChatGPT, but that is a context switch that let's say you're trying to avoid. So what I'll be doing is I'll show you how you can sort of avoid that context switch by making a CLI tool built on Spice that when you run a command that errors, you get not only access to sort of the correct way of going about it in your terminal, but you also get it in a way that's data grounded. I think the best way to do that is just through a demo. And so I've built this pretty small toy CLI tool. It's called Save Me, that will save you when you make a mistake when running your command. So let's say, I'm trying to type echo ASDF or echo hello, and I miss this O at the end. And so it says, okay, command not found. If I run save me, it thinks for a little bit, and then it basically looks at this, it looks at the error message, and it says it doesn't produce any output because it's not recognized, and it says to replace it with echo hello. And what it actually does is it's able to look on the web for sources. So we see one source listed here. That's actually one of the Linux man pages. And if we go and open this up in our browser, you can see that it is the man page for the echo command. And then something else that we can do is, let's say, I'm trying to run Spice. So let's say I'm trying to run, one of the commands that Sergey used was Spice chat. But let's say I miss the H and I just type Spice cat. Now let's see what happens. So, the error message is pretty descriptive, but let's see what happens when we run save me to save us. So here we see the root cause. We see that it's due to the command cat not being recognized. It says to try running Spice help or use Spice catalogs, and it also references the documentation right here. And it also says, you can run Spice help for built-in help. And the way that I was able to do this is essentially through the Spice pod and by using the OpenAI Responses API. So I have a very simple data set here, which is just the Spice documentation for the CLI. I've configured it using the GitHub data connector. We support a vast variety of data connectors. In this case, I've just used GitHub because that's where our documentation is. And I've configured it with acceleration for quick access, so this speeds up query times. And then I have one model, which is sort of the main workhorse behind this CLI tool. I've named it Debugger because that's exactly what it does for us. It helps us, like it says in the system prompt, it helps users resolve any issues that they've ran into in the terminal, and it gives us a root cause, some suggested fixes, and the sources that it consulted. And I guess the new part that's introduced in 1.6 is these two parameters right here, the Responses API and the OpenAI Responses tools. OpenAI's Responses API is its most advanced way of interacting with LLMs, and we're happy to announce that Spice now supports it as a first-class component with first-class configuration. One of the main benefits of the OpenAI Responses API is that you actually get access to OpenAI hosted tools. And now, by supporting this API, Spice integrates with these OpenAI hosted tools directly. Another thing that is nice about this is that Spice actually has its own OpenAI Responses API like compatible endpoint. And so what you can do at the application level to use this is just directly use OpenAI's client. So you can see here in my source code for the Save Me CLI tool, I'm directly using OpenAI's Go SDK. And when I'm making an API call, I am just calling out to the Responses API configured with Spice's configured with the base URL of the Spice instance running locally. And so this essentially, in order to use this, all you have to do is just change the base URL and write some lines of YAML. So it's super easy to get started. We support, and in terms of using tools, we support using Spice tools as well. So for example, this model, it has access to this data set, which it used to get this response. And we also support currently 2 of OpenAI's hosted tools. One, which is web search, which you saw earlier with the man pages, and another one, which is the code interpreter. One more thing is you can also interact with this responses API using Spice Chat. And to do that, you can you can use the responses flag. So I can do Spice Chat -- responses. And what this basically means, it'll direct any chats that I have to the responses API endpoint instead of the chat completions endpoint, which it does by default. So I can select my model here. I'm going to select this helper. And I can just say, what data sets do you have access to? And it'll think for a bit, and then it'll output the data set. Yeah, so we have access to the documentation for Spice.ai, and it has some metadata associated with it, etc. Yeah. So that shows how you can get started with OpenAI's Responses API. It's literally just enabling, adding one parameter if you already have an OpenAI model configured, and you're also able to configure tools for use with the OpenAI Responses API.
Nice. Yeah, super excited to see what our customers build with this. Again, just the ease of use of incorporating the Responses API into your Spice apps is really, really cool. Awesome. Last but not least, Philip.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. I'll be demoing some of our advanced upsert functionality that we've just released in 1.6 and 1.61. But I guess to start off with, I'll kind of zoom out and kind of show like one of the core components of Spice is the data acceleration. And so we can federate queries across different sources, but they can have varying response times. Like querying from GitHub can be slow because you have to page over GitHub's API. Querying from S3 can be, faster, and querying from PostgreSQL can be fastest. But with Spice acceleration, we can make that consistently fast. And so that's one technique that developers have when building on Spice. But one thing that comes up when creating these accelerations is that they want to enforce data integrity similar to how you would in a database where you can set a primary key. But whenever we're updating that data, we want to make sure that the data in the acceleration behaves as we expect. And we've added some new tools in 1.6 to help do that. So to kind of demonstrate this, I'll show this Spice pod, which is currently connecting to a user's table that I have in PostgreSQL. And I'll actually just show here, it's just a very simple table with 3 columns. I have ID, which is just an integer ID. I have a name, and then I have an updated at column. And so what I would like is to have this reflected in my Spice pod acceleration. And so I've also configured an append mode refresh. So that means that, every 5 seconds I'll check to see if there's new data. And that's based on the this updated at timestamp column. So I'll go ahead and run Spice. And we'll see that I've loaded these 10 rows. And if I actually go into Spice and run our Spice SQL, we can do a show tables and then select star from users. And we can see we've got the 10 rows here that we expect. Now, if I make an update, because I haven't configured the primary key, what will happen is even if I updated this in my source to just do IV1, and do save, the updated at column updates automatically. Spice will detect that column was updated and it'll bring it in. But because it's an append mode refresh, when I go and do a select star from users, I'll see that I get duplicate data here, which is not what I want. I want the data to actually update. And so to configure that, all we need to do is just configure this primary key and then conflict. And so I want the primary key to be the ID. So that's basically if I want to insert a new row and I want to deduplicate data by the ID. And if there is a conflict, then I want to upsert it. So now if I run Spice again and do my select star, I can see I've got the 10 rows as before. And now if I do another update, let's say IV2, when Spice finds that new data, it actually updates it in place. So this is the behavior that I want. This is good, but what happens if your data is not clean? Data is not always the cleanest, and we want to make sure that we kind of keep a clean view within Spice. Currently, if you were to deduplicate data exactly, so let's say that I have a query where I accidentally insert data twice. And so to do that, I'll just get the current timestamp here and then update this thing. And so when I run this query, I'll insert 2 rows into the users table that have the exact same row. And what I want to have happen is basically these users are deduplicated. So if I go back into my SQL Explorer, I can see I've got now duplicated data in my source. And if I go over to Spice, I can see that Spice is erroring, saying that there's a constraint violation because the incoming data, so the data that is coming into Spice, is already violating this uniqueness constraint that I've described that I want through this primary key. And so Spice by default won't handle this. But in 1.6, we've added a new feature where you can now change the upsert to this upsert dedupe. And what Spice will do is we'll actually deduplicate the data on the incoming side to give the behavior that we want. And so if I do this and click save, we can see that Spice is now able to load this data. And if I do my select star again, I can see that I only have 1 row, which is what I want, even though I have duplicate rows on the source side. But what happens if the incoming data is not exactly the same? So I've got this other query here where instead of inserting the same data exactly, I'm inserting basically 2 rows, but the data is different between them. And so if I run this, Spice is going to complain again because these rows are not exactly duplicates. And so the deduplication behavior is not going to handle it. And so we've added another flag here, which is called dedupe by row ID. And what this will do is kind of a last right win semantic where if there's a constraint violation on the ID, so there's multiple rows with the same ID, what Spices will do is it'll just choose one of them. It'll be the last one, basically, for it to win. And so if I save this file, we'll see that Spice is able to load that data again. And now when I run my select star from users, I can see that the Jack2 here won. And so I've only got 1 data, 1 row with ID 12, and that is the Jack2, even though in my PostgreSQL, I have multiple rows with different data. And so, yeah, so that's a quick overview of some of the new advanced upsert functionality that we added in 1.6.
Awesome. Great stuff, Philip. In closing, I'd like to just share a few resources to get you started in scaling with Spice, as well as share a few ways to contribute to the project if you're interested. So first of all, we'd really love to hear from you directly. So the Spice Discord, which I'll share in the chat, is a great way to do that. We'd love to hear what you're building, what problems you're encountering, whether it's with Spice or with your application architecture generally. The more we can engage, the more we can help. It's a fully open source project, so open issues, contribute by creating docs or cookbooks. And like I said, we'd love to kind of amplify our Discord discussion. So the more that we can start, engaging in that forum, the better. And then, I guess in the context of these release community calls, we'd love to see your work live. So whatever you're building with Spice, if you're interested in future calls on, in doing a 5-minute demo of what you built, we'd love to see that. And then if you are truly just getting started with Spice, our engineering team has done a great job of putting together a ton of resources to get you started really across a bunch of different use cases. So there's over 70 cookbooks that are very practical to get you started, just in a few lines of code. Our GitHub obviously has tons of additional resources. Again, we encourage you to contribute as much as you can. Really over the past handful of months, we've done a really nice job, I think, of adding short tutorial videos to YouTube. So that's another great place to get started building. And then of course, Discord again as kind of the day-to-day. If you have ad hoc questions, be sure to hit us up there. And as a fully open source project, the roadmap is totally public. So again, I'll share that in the chat. But if you're interested in seeing what's coming up here in the coming months and releases, that's a great place. But we'll do our best in these calls as well to share what's coming up here in the upcoming releases. And with that, I think that's all we have for today. But really appreciate everyone joining. Again, really look forward to making this a regular occurrence. So we'll see you hopefully sometime in October.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,